Welcome back to Stooge Stream. I'm your host, the Stooge, and today I've got 12 PS2 hidden gems that you should have in your collection. Now's the time to be buying PS2 games. They're slowly starting to go up in price. There's a few that are already expensive, as anybody who collects it probably already knows. But the majority of the games are still fairly cheap, and you can get some great titles for a few dollars, sometimes even less. So let's kick it off with a couple that you really should have. If you watch my PSP video, you know I've got love for Gun. This is a great game. Lots of fun. Third person, action, western. Let me tip that up a little bit. Amazing game. If you like action games, Gun is definitely one that you should be adding to your collection. I don't really need to say too much about that. Next one. This is a great multiplayer game. If you've got some friends around, there is no way that you cannot have, I'll straighten that up, an amazing time with Rampage Total Destruction. And not only do you get Rampage Total Destruction, but you also get the original Rampage. So if you've got a friend around, a couple of friends, if you've got a multi-tap, this is a goer for sure. This is the original party game. You get to destroy cities as monsters. Come on! We'll save those ones. Alright. So the PS2 was home to a lot of compilations. Now, I've got over 300 games in my PS2 library currently, so this isn't anywhere near all of the gems that I've got. This is just a small selection. But two of the collections that you really should keep your eyes out for is Midway Arcade Treasures 3. This is the racing one. So you get Hydro Thunder, Rush, Super Off-Road, Badlands, Race Driving, Stun Runner, San Francisco Rush 2040, Off-Road, Thunder, Mud, Sweat, and Gears. Some of them you may not have heard of, some of them you may have. Either way, this is a fun compilation of games that you can normally get for a few dollars. It's got 8 very cool racing games, and look, at the end of the day, there may only be 4 or 5 of them that you play, but it's still worth the money that you're going to pay for that. Speaking of Midway Arcade Treasures, another great Midway Arcade Treasure is the first one. The second one's fantastic as well. I believe it's got the Mortal Kombat games on it. I don't have that yet. We'll be getting it. But the first one has a bunch of classic arcade games. You probably can't see if we can get that a little bit closer for you. So you got Spy Hunter, Defender, Defender 2, Gauntlet, Joust, Joust 2, Paperboy, Rampage, Marble Madness, Robotron, Smash TV, and look, there's a bunch of others. Klax is on there, and a bunch of other really, really cool classic arcade games. Really good collection, well worth having as well. And again, they're so cheap. You can normally get them for a few dollars at best. If you're into shoot 'em ups, there is quite a number of shoot 'em ups on the PS2. People don't really associate the PS2 with shoot 'em ups, but there is quite a number of them. 1941, 1 and 2, I believe, and a bunch of other collections. But this one, Gunbird Special Edition, this is really good. If you like shooters, you will get your money's worth out of this one. It's a lot of fun. Again, if you like your bullet hell shooters, you will absolutely love. You probably already know Gunbird. Like I'm preaching to the converted. All right, let's move that over. Next up, another third-person action game. If you like third-person action games, the PS2 is home of a billion of them, but a series that kind of very much started and died on the PS2 was State of Emergency. There was 2 games, State of Emergency 1 and 2. 2 I'll probably be bringing out in another video, but 1 is the classic. It's a great brawling third-person beat-em-up. It is so much fun. If you like beat-em-ups, you will like that. It's in the vein of a Streets of Rage type game, but on a much bigger scale and more arcade style, which is hard to explain. It's very, very arcadey in its execution, so it's very quick and frenetic. And better yet, I mean, look at who made it. Yes, Rockstar made it, so you know that there's quality behind that title, and it's very much worth checking out. Another cheapy action game from Russia with Love. This was very, very much overlooked. It's just a third-person action game. It's really fun, though, and so cheap. I mean, Screenshots don't look anything special, as you can see, but trust me when I say that this game is a lot of fun. I finished it maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, twice on PS2 and once on PSP, I believe. You may see a theme here, but the theme's going to change shortly, so don't stress. RPGs are very much going to be represented in this list, but another action game, there was, I believe, 3 or 4 of them on the PS2, and that's the Armored Core series, so this is Last Raven. If you like mech shooters, now this is a little bit more complicated, a bit more difficult than your typical, third-person, just action shooter game. There is a lot more strategy to it. They're a lot deeper. Building your ships or your armored cores are real fun because you unlock parts and you've got to kind of whack them together and try and make something that suits your playstyle. Lots of fun. There's a lot of flight sims, fantasy flight sims, and space shooters, if you want to call them that, on the PS2 and Xbox era as well, and this one was fantastic. Star Wars Starfighter. The amount of hours I put into this game when it first came out, and again when I picked it up for the second time, this is just a great space shooter. If you like the Rebel Assault style games, you'll really like this too. So much fun. I really highly recommend Starfighter. It's just an amazing space shooter. Okay, so we've got 3 RPGs. So I'll start with the action RPG. And yes, everybody knows this game, Dark Cloud. This is one of the games that isn't cheap, unfortunately. It's a little bit harder to get. But it is an amazing dungeon crawler action RPG where you kind of have to build this town back as well. So when you get deeper and deeper in the dungeon, you unlock more places you can build, which unlocks more people in the town, which gives you more things you can purchase, more unlockables. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, trust me. But you do have a town building element on top of your action RPG element. I've actually had that since it came out. It was one of those, I'll have a look at it type purchase, and I fell in love with that game. I think I may have the second one. I hope I do. If not, I'm going to have to pay through the nose for that because it's not cheap either. But great game. If you can find Dark Cloud 1 or Dark Cloud 2, I highly recommend getting them. Now, these are 2 also expensive RPGs, but well worth it. Now, this is part of a trilogy. Hack Infection, I've only got the first one, and yes, that is how much I paid for it. Complete, in amazing condition. Like, I was super psyched to get this because this is one of those games I thought I would never actually have the opportunity to play, but I got it for $5, so yeah, and that's $5 no less. Great game. This can be quite expensive these days, and it's up to you whether you think it's worth paying for it or not, but it is a great RPG, and I would like to get the other parts in the series as well. And finally, another RPG series that people didn't fall in love with until much later in its lifespan, because it took a few years for the next one to come out. And that's where kind of everybody jumped on the bandwagon with it, and that's the Persona series. So Persona 4 is the famous one in the series, but we forget that Persona 1 is on PS1, Persona 2 and 3 are on PS2, I believe. 2 maybe on PS1. Someone can correct me in the comments below. But Persona 3, this can be, again, expensive. I got very lucky, and it's an NTSC copy, as you can see, but I've got a region-free PlayStation. So I paid $20 for it, which is extraordinarily cheap. Extraordinarily so. And it is a great RPG, and I highly recommend playing it. The problem is, this is another one that can be costly. The last 3 there can very much be costly. They're 3 of the more expensive PS2 games, whereas everything else I've shown you can get for very cheap. Now again, it's up to you if you think the price is worth it or not. I'm a huge RPG fan, and I got lucky with the prices, and all Dark Cloud I've had since it came out, but the other 2 I got very lucky with the prices. And it's totally up to you again if you think it's worth paying for them, but at the end of the day, all I can say is they are great games. And Persona in particular, probably is worth shelling out the money for, because with Persona 5 coming, Persona 4 you've probably played, and we all have. It'd be great to know what happened in 3, and I'm kind of slowly playing through it now, and I want to finish it before 5 comes out. Yeah, like, again, great games on the console, great console. Thousands of games came out for the PlayStation. I've got hundreds of them, so I'm sure we'll be back with some more hidden gems for the PS2 at some stage later on. In the meantime, comment below, let me know what your hidden gems for the PS2 are. I'd love to know, in case there's any I've missed and something I can keep my eye out for. Until next time though, adventure, excitement, Stooge Craves, not these things. Welcome to the Stooge Revolution.